How did the whole thing start for you? When, where, how did you learn something horrible had happened?
We were sitting at home as a family. Almost everybody was here. Olivia was just living down in Southern California, but everyone else was here. We were watching a football game, and we started. The phone rang, and we heard that something was going on. As a father of five kids, I can't tell you how many times we think something bad's happened, and we can't find one of the kids, and they're just hiding underneath the table or something. So you try to stay calm, and you try to tell yourself that this is just some rumor, something that's been blown out of proportion. Maybe there was some type of accident, but it's not like what has been described to you.
And
We brought up the shooting. We'd heard somebody said fentanyl and stuff. So
yeah, somebody said that they had OD'd.
And thank God he did that. I'm so glad that he just. I guess so many people who just won't be honest with us, but he was like, no, Mr. Gonzalez, that's not true. This was a homicide. Somebody killed. So we knew right off the bat. So then we could stop the rumors right then and there, try to do the right thing. But yeah, my son had already heard that it was a fentanyl OD, and he's still going to college down there.
We were like, that's insane. Like, there's no way, And then we had heard they were shot, and then we heard that they, it was an OD. We were just like, no.
My son had already heard that it was a fentanyl OD. What is the difference between the statement, my son had already heard that it was a fentanyl OD, and the statement, my son had already been told that it was a fentanyl OD? I'm certainly no English scholar, but both of these statements are examples that describe an action that happened before another action in the past. By using the term had already heard, Steve Gonsalves uses an active voice, whereas the term had already been told is more so in a passive voice when used. Steve, using the active voice, focuses on Stephen Jr.'s knowledge, whereas use of the passive voice focuses more on the informer's action. The active term, had already heard, implies that the information was received in a rather vague way, as though it was a rumor or simply overheard, whereas the passive term, had already been told, implies direct communication. While both ways of saying something similar, while having different connotations, you can expect that when somebody uses the term had already heard, it is in the implied context of Steve Jr. already knew it. One says that when they want to highlight that the information was already known to the subject, that info was already known by Stephen Jr. in this case. If Steve G. would have used the term had already been told, it would have been said in the implied context of someone told him already. One says this when they want to emphasize that someone else provided the information. If Stephen Jr. is shown in a photograph in the presence of AKL fraternity members, one may assume that Stephen Jr. is somewhat associated with the AKL frat. Therefore, is it fair to say that Stephen Jr., Kaylee's brother, may have received word from AKL frat members? So then, it is fair to say that it is possible that Stephen Jr. knows either of the AKL frat members who descended from the area of the 1122 King Road residence on the night of November 13, 2022, between 2:40 and 2:55 in the morning? Yes, these are the 4 males from the Banfield video. It is possible that they may have known if there was a substance-induced fatality or an unconscious state that either Zana or Ethan was under at that time. Let us proceed then. If Stephen Jr. was on campus or at home in northern Idaho, it is possible that he learned of Zana and Ethan by the time he woke up, or earlier, either from Kaylee, who may have heard from Peyton at the grub truck. Surely Kaylee would have phoned her parents to let them know, if neither of them knew already, that it was Zana and Ethan. That may have been enough for Steve and Christy Gonzalez to worry about. This now becomes a case of things that they knew and things that they did not yet have knowledge about that were about to happen down in Moscow.
So came home. They diagnosed him with Ramsay Hunt, and he was in a lot of pain. But our son came over, and they were watching the football game. And me and his mom and my mom started getting out Christmas decorations because I was like, let's decorate. Let's start decorating for Christmas. My niece called, and she was very frantic. And she was asking me if I had talked to Kaylee. And I was like, yeah, I had just talked to Kaylee the night before. I mean, this is around 1:30ish.
Tell me exactly what's going on. One of the roommates has passed out, and she was drunk last night and she's not waking up. Okay. Oh, and they saw some man in their house last night. Yeah. Hi, and are you with the patient? Okay, I need someone to keep the phone, stop passing it around. Can I just tell you what happened pretty much? What is going on currently? Is someone passed out right now? I don't really know, but pretty much at 4 a.m. Okay, I need to know what's going on right now if someone is passed out. Can you find that out? Yeah, I'll come. Come on, Bethany, we gotta go check. But we have to. Did you pass out?
The phone rang and we heard that something was going on. As a father of 5 kids, I can't tell you how many times we think something bad's happened and we can't find one of the kids and they're just hiding underneath the table or something. So you try to stay calm and you try to tell yourself that this is just some rumor, something that's been blown out of proportion. Maybe there was some type of accident, but it's not like what has been described to you.
Knowing what had happened to Zana at 1:19 a.m., consider how Kaylee's parents may have felt, confused upon waking, hearing that 4 of 6 roommates were possibly murdered, which would give credence to the following statement. Bethany Funk's memorial letter, that served as a statement in honor of her deceased roommates, also reflects the implied situation where a problem that could have been remedied if medical assistance was sought turned into a tragedy that exceeded that which was humanely acceptable. Listen for the last line in her letter.
And Maddie, I don't even know where to begin. You were the sweetest and most loving person I've ever known. You had so much love in your heart for so many people. You're not only one of my best friends, but you were the older sister that I'd always wanted. No matter what, you always made me feel so loved and special. You always made sure to include me in everything. I was so beyond happy and proud that you were my big. I would introduce you to everyone and anyone, telling them that you were my big. I would even introduce you multiple times to one person in the same night. I always looked up to you so much. You were always so organized, determined, and had your priorities straight, and you always gave me the best advice. And no matter what, you would always help me and were always willing to help. I really believe that you would have been so successful and would have accomplished all of your goals in life because that's just who you were. Thank you for making my life so fun and enjoyable with all of the memories and adventures that we had. Thank you for being a ray of sunshine. Thank you for always being there for me no matter what and always having my back. Thank you for always finding a way to make me smile or laugh and for making my life better just by being your friend. You always told me that everything happens for a reason, but I'm having a really hard time trying to understand the reason for this.
Okay, so you guys watching Vampire Diaries out in this main, the second level? Okay, and then for how long?
I don't know. And then Maddie and Caleb came home from the club. And then we all hung out in Caleb's room for a little.
So Maddie and Kaylee were at the club?
Yeah.
You know how long they were there? Probably till closing at least?
I don't know. They went to drug truck after.
You know how long they were there? Probably till closing at least?
I don't know. They went to drug truck after.
Which backs up a story that, let's be honest, the 19-year-old didn't know they're going to go through her phone. They're going to track it. There was this CAS system. They're going to go all through this house. Know when they went upstairs, went downstairs. They didn't know any of this. And they're not talking about cleaning up a murder.
To drug truck after.
Cleaning up a drug.
So, how early did Steve and Christy know about Xana and Ethan? They must have known that Xana fell unconscious, while Ethan slept as long as he was able, as others kept his pulse rate. Steve slips with this knowledge in the next clip about that which may have transpired after 2 o'clock in the morning, when Xana's condition would be covered up with what appeared to be a quadruple murder.
Well, did Hunter tell you that he was able to open the door to Xana's room and witness Xana and Ethan in there?
He told me that he went to the door and he was trying to go through that door and he was trying to figure out what was going on in there. It's kind of like what you're hearing with that audio. He announced himself. He said, "Hey, I'm here. What's going on?" But they didn't respond, and he went in there. He seen something, and I think around 2:15, you hear when somebody truly sees something.
Okay. So I don't know if I have any other questions for you right now. Okay, I appreciate that you did very well recalling as things become more clear. Write them down or something so you don't forget. Sound like a good plan? Like I said, some other people are.
Her dad called her and her brother said he was being questioned, and so he just wanted to know more information on it, if you can call family or anything.
Not at this time.
Okay.
Sorry, guys. I'm back off mic.
Don't you recall hearing that Dylan was calling people to come over the next morning? Do you recall hearing how different neighbors saw the front door left opened around 8:30 in the morning, open enough so that Hunter Johnson could enter a passcode come noon? See how reality is formed, shaped, and reshaped in the way that they want you to either remember, forget, or else doubt if you had ever heard it in the first place? As for the substance fatality turned quadruple murder, since it had to be done, is it fair that Kaylee and Maddie were held subject to the fear of others? Fear that the cause of Xana's and Ethan's incapacitation would bring unwanted attention to the city of Moscow and the city's greatest source of income, the university? Why couldn't Kaylee and Maddie just up and go before decisions were made that couldn't be undone? Who had decided this? I want you to hold the possibility that this was and is still the case, despite the contradictory words and behavior of Steve Gonsalves. It seems as if Steve is carefully treading a fine line here, demanding that the truth be told, that his daughter didn't have to die. Madison didn't have to die. Xana and Ethan's situation was of their own doing. Or was it?
Somebody isn't communicating. There's nothing being released. It seems like they're trying to suppress the story.
I saw this comment on Facebook and wanted to share it because it clarifies everything and to stop people from speculating about the survivors. Supposedly, a few days after the murders, someone was asking questions on the victims' past Instagram posts about the survivors. Two of the people who were at the house with the roommates when the call was made quickly came to their defense, and this is supposedly what they said. Keep in mind, this is all alleged. Two people who claimed to be at the house with the roommates when the bodies were discovered quickly came to the surviving roommate's defense and wrote that the roommates woke up and went upstairs to the kitchen and noticed the sliding glass door was open, and it was during that time they discovered Ethan. They didn't say where he was found on that floor, but that it was so horrific that both girls went into shock and ran out of the house. One of the roommates fainted, and the other was beyond hysterical and not making any sense. Their frantic actions while coming out of the house caught the attention of people walking past. The people responding on the victim's Instagram account claimed to be two of these people. They implied that the roommate who fainted had already dialed 911, but was so distraught that she fainted before she could give any information to the dispatcher so that they could understand what was going on. The only info that the bystander who picked up the roommate's phone could give the 911 dispatcher was she was just saw her friend run out of the house and faint. That's how the 911 call was made on the roommate's phone and by somebody else. And why the call went out for an unconscious person? While the bystander was on the phone with 911, the other roommate was hysterically trying to explain that something was wrong with Ethan. By this point, several more people had stopped to see what was happening, and one or two of them went into the house to see if they could help him. There were multiple people in the yard, and that time, and those people began contacting their friends that someone in the house was badly hurt. Someone called Ethan's brother Hunter to tell him something was wrong with his brother because he lived close to the house. And someone called one of the other victims' boyfriend, as he was also Ethan's best friend. They didn't go into detail on if either of the boys had arrived before the paramedics did, but it did kind of sound like they did. They didn't go into detail on what kind of injuries Ethan suffered. They also didn't say if anyone went to check on the other roommates before the paramedics arrived, but it somewhat implied that someone had. The only details they gave about the scene itself was that it was incomprehensibly bloody. While those people were in their house checking on Ethan and possibly the other roommates, the paramedics arrived to a very chaotic scene, believing they were there to assess an unconscious person outside, but were redirected to go inside to help someone who was hurt very badly. So they walked into the house unaware that it was a crime scene, contaminated most of everything on the second floor. It doesn't sound like the roommates were roaming throughout the house, carelessly contaminating everything, fully aware that their friends had been murdered. It sounds like the scene was contaminated by numerous people who were trying to help, unaware and unable to comprehend what they were looking at, and that it was a crime scene.